me. Once again, I totally overestimated some of my audience. I thought we could at least all agree that a police officer kneeling on the neck of someone for 9 minutes until they're dead was not a good thing. But apparently not. Apparently, if you've used drugs in the past, if you've been arrested in the past, you deserve whatever happens to you. I'm a former drug addict. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I have done a lot of things. You know, I've used drugs, I've carried drugs, I probably even sold drugs in my past at one time or another. So does that mean that if I were to walk in a convenience store today and unknowingly pass a fake $20 bill, we don't know that George Floyd knew it was fake or not, and then a police officer came and pulled me out of my car and put me on a curb and put his knee on my neck, does that mean I deserve it? Just because, let's say I have a rap sheet. I don't, but let's say I did. Does that make it okay? Because I have a past, because I have a history, even if I'm drunk and high at that time, does that make what the officer did okay? Apparently, for some of you, you think so. Why? Dig down and deep inside and ask yourself why. Because he's just a black man? We just made a huge deal about Gabby Petito. Huge. I mean, all over the news, everybody's talking about it. Can you name a single woman of color who has made national news because she was murdered or lost, disappeared? Name one. Indigenous women are far more likely to get disappeared and missing. They at a much higher rate than white women, and yet we never hear about it. So to say that George Floyd caused his own death because he had a rap sheet, because he made mistakes. So I'm not doing this video to justify my actions. I'm not doing this video to explain to you, well, maybe to explain, but I'm not trying to defend myself about why I visited the George Floyd Memorial. My hope with this video is to help some people maybe see another side of this that you haven't seen or heard because of the echo chambers we all seem to live in. I can't believe the comments I'm seeing, and I can't believe people are unsubscribing from my channel still after 5.5 years. I mean, I don't care. Go. You know, I mean, my new thing is, you know, I work for free basically anyway for most of you, and you know, if you want to get upset about what I believe and what I see, go. Just go. I think I'm going to make a t-shirt that says just go. I don't care. And, but I do, I mean, you've been here, you've been watching my videos, so there's something about me that's intriguing or that you enjoy watching. So maybe you can tune in for the next 10 minutes and just listen to my side. Just listen to maybe a little bit of a different perspective that I'm sure you haven't heard. First of all, do you have any idea who George Floyd really was? You've heard about his arrest records. You've heard that he was arrested, he was a violent criminal, he put a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach, which is not true. But do you really know who he is? The reason I visited the George Floyd Memorial, it wasn't just for George Floyd. It was for the inequalities our society propagates against minorities, women, people of color, people of certain sexual orientations, and LGBTQ community. And we have so much work to do in this society for everyone in our society to be equal. The George Floyd Square Memorial is just one reminder that we have so far to go. So, and I'm going to prove that to you. Did you know that George Floyd went to college? I bet you didn't. Did you know that George Floyd was a star basketball and football player in high school? Bet you didn't. George Floyd is a son of a single mother. He was a son of a single mother. She moved to Texas from South Carolina or North Carolina when he was a toddler because she wanted to find work. She moved into low-income housing. the projects. And against all odds, a young black boy in the projects, he excelled in high school against all the odds. He graduated high school. He was a star athlete. He went to community college in Florida for a couple years, and then he actually went to Texas A&M for a year. Bet you didn't know that, did you? Bet you also didn't know that kids that are raised in low-income environments, especially the projects, are more prone to anxiety, are less likely to graduate, are more likely to go to prison. Yeah. And yet he went to college. But then he went back to Texas looking for a job in construction. He did a year at Texas A&M, and then he went back to find a job. And that's when the trouble started for him. We don't know why. I don't know why. I didn't dig that deep. Between 1997 and 2007, George Floyd was arrested 8 times while he lived in the projects with his mother. So I think it's safe to say that sometime either at college or when he got back, he started doing drugs. He started doing cocaine, it sounds like, because he kept getting arrested with less than a gram of cocaine. I think it's also important to point out, number one, how many of you have done hard drugs or drugs, even pot? It was illegal. And how many of you have been arrested for it 8 times? How does one get arrested for carrying less than a gram of cocaine 6 or 7 times? He's only got one violent offense, and we'll get to that in a minute. But how does a person get caught with less than a gram of cocaine 6 or 7 times? I'll tell you. During that time, the police were coming in and doing sweeps. They were just coming into the neighborhood, coming into the projects, rounding up a bunch of black men and searching them. Yeah, how many of you can say that has happened in your neighborhood? This is a product of living in a low-income housing complex. How many of you can say that's ever happened in your neighborhood? That the police just came in and rounded people up and put them against a wall and searched them. And of course, once you have your first arrest, you're fair game, right? Probation and parole violations and things like that. Any perceived crime, loitering, even loitering. If you're just hanging outside, you're loitering. That's a parole violation. Get up against the wall. Let me search you. There's always more to the story than what you see or what you hear. This is George Floyd's life, living. I don't know why he lived with his mom. I don't know if he needed to take care of his mom. I don't know what that deal was. But here he was, being part of these raids by the police and rounded up. And that's why he kept getting arrested for less than a gram of cocaine. He never got arrested for sale. He got arrested for transport of cocaine, less than a gram of cocaine a couple times. I don't know what that means. Transporting it because it was in his pocket. But they never charged him with sale. He never did prison time. He did a few months in jail here and there. And then the big one, so here's the thing, right-wing talking head pundits are all over the place painting him out to be a hardened, violent criminal, without ever talking about the fact that if he lived in a white neighborhood in the burbs, if he was a white guy, half of those arrests, none of those arrests probably would have happened. That's a fact. Study after study after study. I just read about a Harvard study that shows if you are raised in a poor neighborhood, low-income housing, your chances of getting arrested are higher. Your chances of going to prison, of dropping out of high school. He started to beat the odds. We don't know what happened at Texas A&M. We don't know what happened when he came back and started doing drugs. Maybe he got injured. I don't know. So what else did he have to live for, and started doing drugs? The right-wing pundits are also saying he's violent, he's horrible. You're defending a hardened criminal who put a gun to a pregnant woman's belly. So there was an armed robbery in 2007, which, by the way, was his last arrest. The facts around this case are a little unclear. The witnesses said it was a large black man. And so George Floyd was the driver of the car. You can read about it, you know, just do your, and that's the other thing. All of this information is easy to find. His arrest records are easy to find. It's public record. Go do the research if you don't believe me. If you think this is just leftist, blaming, propaganda, oh, you know, George Floyd, you're making him out to be a saint. Well, the other side is making him out to be a villain. And there's always more to the story. So the woman who was held at gunpoint during this armed robbery that witnesses say a large black man took part in, and they later said was George Floyd, she wasn't pregnant. There's absolutely zero evidence whatsoever in any of the reports that she was pregnant. So that's a lie. That's a lie that the right-wing media is telling you to hate him, to blame the victim. Because heaven forbid we should look at the real issues. The real issue is we have a systemic problem in this country of not treating those who aren't white male elite fairly and equally. And that's most of you too. While people of color and women are not treated fairly, and people of certain sexual orientation are not treated fairly in this country, neither are poor people. Poor people have just as have disadvantages, just like you know, minorities. Why can't we see that? Why can't we acknowledge that? And why can't we all band together and fight the real enemy? George Floyd is not the enemy. He did not deserve to die. And there's a lot about the toxicology report, another lie. Snopes said it was exaggerated. There was a tiny bit of fentanyl in his system and a tiny bit of methamphetamine in his system. Both of those could have been from use days ago. The right-wing media is like, he was high on fentanyl and methamphetamine. And everybody, of course, wants to paint that as he was out of control and wild. And, you know, I've done LSD. I mean, I've done methamphetamines, I've done opiates. That doesn't necessarily make you violent. And he didn't want to get in the car, he said, because he was claustrophobic. There's a lot to the story. I'll put a link below. I hope you read it. So that's it. He did not hold a gun to it. You know, people said it was his pregnant girlfriend. Not true. It was a woman in an armed robbery. She wasn't pregnant. And we have to look at the context. Why was he arrested 8 times? Well, let's just say 7 times for minor drug offenses, really. Members of my own family have done worse than George Floyd, and not only have served less time and have been, you know, and have had encounters with cops where the cops say, okay, just go home and sleep it off. We have to look at the bigger issues. That's why I went to the George Floyd Memorial, because it's not just about George Floyd. It's about every person of color who is mistreated in this country. It is about every woman who is mistreated in this country. It is about every person of sexual orientation who is missing and abused and not treated fairly in this country. And if you can't understand the bigger issue because you just want to live in your echo chamber of blaming the victim, I hope that you'll be able to hear me. I hope that you'll be able to look at some of the links in the video description and do your own research. No matter what, short of George Floyd being armed and threatening to kill the officers, he did not deserve that. I'm going to say what I said at the end of the last video. We all do better when we all do better. And doing better does not mean listening blindly to the echo chamber who wants you to believe that black people deserve to die, or that women deserve to die, or that women of color or indigenous women or whatever. We have to come together. Stop buying into their crap, please. All right. I hope you heard me. See you next time. Bye.